Put on your mental track shoes and run with me. This is the Pow Wow with Mayra.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the powwow. Today I have with me Myra. Myra, how are you?
Really. I'm I'm doing well.
All right. That was the fake intro. So I'm gonna do, I'm gonna do it in my normal voice now. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the powwow. Today we've all right. So today we've flipped things inverse order. So we have Myra's brother behind the camera instead of myself, and today I'm gonna interview Myra, and and we're gonna get to know her a little bit better. And we thought it'd be good to kind of go through the origin story of the podcast and talk more a little bit about what we're trying to do. So Myra, give me your 1 or 2 minute elevator pitch about yourself, and we can go from there.
Well, I am a real estate agent that helps people find their homes. And also learn along the way. I just don't help them, but I help them understand every step of the process so that by the end of the transaction, they can easily tell somebody else a basic steps of how to get it done. Um and then I train jujitsu. I've been doing that for 2.5 years. And in between that time, I became a mother of of a little girl who is now 1 year old. And most recently, I am the host of this podcast.
And you're the wife to me.
I am.
Don't forget that.
Sorry.
I do.
Yes, I have been married. We have been married for, well, we've been together for 8 years. And we've been married for 4 years,
That's
four and a half,
yeah, 5.5.
5.5. My math. Okay, it's 2018. I know the year.
Okay, so
My math might not be on point.
yeah, probably not. But all right, so let's talk about the podcast. Kind of going back to the origin story. Like, when did you know that you wanted to start a podcast?
Well, the idea first sparked in our living room. It was like winter of 2020, actually. And I was talking to my mom, and we were talking. She was telling us about like stories of back in the day that even herself, she, they were told by her grandparents, and so they're basically like myths, right? And pretty crazy, interesting stories. So as she was saying all that stuff, we were talking about like when we have kids, we're gonna tell our kids these stories, and they'll be wondering the same thing, like, oh, how much of this is true or how much of it's myth. And then we're talking about my mom's story, which she was the first guest on the podcast, very first, and the third episode two of the podcast. So we had my mom of her telling her story. So as she was saying the story, I was like, well, our kids don't necessarily need to wonder how much of it is true or not. We can just make a podcast and have it recorded and forever, basically.
Yeah, because the thing with the stories, right, is they weren't, that nothing was written down,
Right.
nothing was recorded. Yeah.
It's just passed down of word of mouth, right? So with my mom having a pretty crazy story herself, that's when the idea sparked of, oh, it would be fun for us to do a podcast. And I immediately thought of you. I'm like, well, everything is possible because I mean, I have I have the biggest tool, which is my jack of all trades husband, that he can I he like all the hardest part is the technical aspect. And I knew, you would be like the one for the job, right? So I like there was really no obstacles because I knew it could be done.
Right, right.
Um, and
'Cause
then that's
I
when
kind
I
of had
told
that.
you.
I kind of had the like the video creation background. I had
Yes.
the photography background, so I had the camera,
Yes.
some of the equipment, or at the time we thought most of the equipment, which turned out to be a small fraction of the equipment we need, but we can get into that more.
Yeah.
So that's winter of
Yeah, I
2020,
think it was like November.
or yeah, so November 2020. You had that conversation. Like what happened from there? Because we started in January of this year. So what is that? One, two? Is that 3 years later? 2 years later?
Yeah.
So what elapsed over that time frame?
Well, when I shot you the idea, you were like immediately down and you're like, "Yeah, let's do it." So, you started buying some equipment, we started getting the room ready. We reorganized the entire room so we can kind of get it like
You're talking about our guest room?
our guest room.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, yeah, before our guest room, because we didn't have a daughter at the time. So, which was my office. And so we were like, okay, we'll have it here, and we started getting some stuff. I got the room ready, um, and then I did get busy with real estate, but I don't really think that was the reason why we didn't continue doing it at the time. I think more so like I got a little bit of cold feet. Like I started getting nervous, I started getting afraid, I started getting basically cold feet, really. And I was like, "No, I don't know."
And
And the reason why I thought about a podcast is because I I I mean, since probably since 2019, I've been an avid listener of podcasts.
right, right.
So like even music, very rarely do I listen to music. Shows, TV shows, we only watch them at night when we're going to bed, and sometimes we have to watch the same episode like every day the whole week cuz I fall asleep. So TV and stuff, I don't listen too much, but I do listen to audiobooks. And at the time, especially back then, it was just like podcast,
Yeah,
podcast,
yeah.
podcast, podcast. So that's why I thought of, oh, we can do a podcast.
Okay, so we bought the equipment, and by that I think we bought a couple of microphones, like Rode Pod mics,
Mm-hmm.
and we bought the Rodecaster, which is basically a thing you plug the microphones into. I think that was about it. And at the time, I had one camera, so we thought we were good to go. But but we can get into that more of that later. The some of the details. Um, but So we bought the equipment, and like many things, I think you had the motivation, and then it just kind of went by the wayside, right? Wasn't a priority. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so then, like, it kind of went by the wayside. You were focusing on other things. I think the equipment was in a closet,
Yes.
or I was like trying to use it for work, just for fun, because
Yeah.
I'm a nerd like that. Oh, and today we have these stands, but at first we had some like just simple stands.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when did it transition from the equipment's in the closet to like, hey, like I'm thinking about this podcast thing again?
So I think like many situations, like through my line of work, which is real estate, I get to work with a lot of different people who have amazing stories, like everybody. And, from working in real estate, that's one of the things that, um, funny enough, I mean, you would think it's a no brainer, but it's really different when you're actually doing the job and getting to work with different people, and everybody has a crazy story. And then I get to work with them for a period of time. Back in that time, it would be several months because the market was crazy. So we just get to see homes and see homes and see homes until so I got to really get to know people and their families and their stories.
But I think the thing is too that with you, as opposed to like maybe other people or like me, like you're really easy to talk to, and people like open up to you. Um, Whereas me, I know I can be like harder to talk to and more intimidating. So I think you probably like noticed like, hey, and I think you have more patience than me. It's like you really got to know people and their stories, and I think that's probably sort of like clicked for you, right?
Yeah, I know. I was like, all these stories are very good, like very crazy, and everybody's like so strong, and everybody has their ups and downs, but for the most part, like everybody's like so, I guess strong and like just continuing and going, and whatever way, even if they don't know, a lot of people just keep pushing for better. And so I find that very inspiring, right? So then I was like, okay, well, and not only just in real estate, even just the people that I know overall. And
And before you move on for that, I do want to say, like, I think that takes us to like one of our like tenets of the podcast today, which is that everyone has a story, right?
exactly.
And that we're on like social media, and there's these podcasts you listen to, and everyone's famous, and obviously like they're entertaining or this or that, but like everyday people we know, they all have a story and a really interesting background. And then I don't
Right.
want to get too sidetracked, but it's like we found that like, or I found that like we would be doing a podcast, and I'd be like, all right, we're about to record a podcast with this person, and I'm prejudging them and like thinking like I'm gonna be bored, but we're like over 20 episodes deep now, and I've really never been bored with an episode while we're recording. So, anyways,
Yeah.
I don't want to get too sidetracked. So continue.
So it was that even just like like we don't have really much family here, but like there's this other side of like family that's connected through my aunt. Basically my aunt's in-laws, like that side of the family. It's a big family. And so everybody came from nothing basically, with nothing, no language, no money, even no like actual like legal status even. And for many years now, like just since forever that I can remember up until today, everybody's working, and most of them run their own companies or have their own, group of people working for them. And so, um, to me, like, that's very inspiring. People that just have so many obstacles, yet they don't they just kind of push through them or don't even make them really an obstacle. It's just what it is, and they'll do the best they can. So, like, to me, that's always been very inspiring. And so also, for a good portion, especially like when I first got my real estate license, I would drive for Uber and Lyft while I got business and got the the wheels kind of rolling. Um I drove quite a bit of Lyft and for Uber and Lyft. And so a lot of like I got to say, like, I had no terrible experiences with them, like no bad experience. Everybody seems mostly nice. And then in the long rides, we would get into people's stories and lives, and I got to listen to a lot of them, and people giving advice and all kinds of people with everybody basically that I've been exposed to. And that I get to talk to for a period of time. Everybody is just um, I don't know. I don't even know why, I guess, but we always go into conversations that to me they inspire like me, like they open my eyes, I guess, in some sense. And so, and I do love talking to people too. Like I like really, really do. So, and I'll do it anyway. So then that's why I was like, well, towards the end here, the end of the year, um,
And last year, so 2022.
yes.
Okay.
So like and towards the end, it was like I want to say it was like November too, because I told you in December.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in November, I started really getting a really strong feeling, and I had to work some through some of the mental, um struggles I was going through, I guess, which were like,
I mean, like, you were, like, scared of being on camera
yeah,
and, like, hearing yourself.
yeah,
But yeah, well, I think at least that's pretty normal, I think, for most people, right? They're nervous to see themselves. They're nervous to hear themselves.
yes. So like I had to like literally like the feeling was so strong to just get it done, because I knew that I understood that the fear that I had was only like temporary. And I understood with that, with just the act of repetition, I would just eventually get better. And if I just focused on like the result, the end result, which was ultimately even for me to become a better listener and a better speaker, this like everything pointed to this, you know. So even just sharing people's stories and creating an environment for them, local environment,
Uh,
of people of all walks, but then also, you know, for myself, because I knew that this doing this was gonna elevate my skills, many skills.
Yeah, and there's 2 things you touched on, or you 2 things you said I wanna touch on, which is, 1, I think that knowing that through repetition, you will get better, like, I think that's the key to success for so many people in all aspects of life, right?
Right.
Like, once you learn that, you're like, "Oh, like, this is how it works," and, like, I've applied that to my career, to woodworking, to photography, well, now to podcasting, which we can get into some of the technical stuff too.
To training.
And then the other thing is that you didn't start this with the goal to get famous or the goal to make money.
Mm-mm.
I think the making money thing would be nice, sure. But you started it with other goals in mind. So that helps with consistency, right? You're not getting discouraged by the numbers. I mean, granted, like we've had good numbers, but I mean, obviously, like um, it's slow at first, and these things take time to grow. Anyways,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And you know, one of the things too that I thought, I mean, see, it's like many things that led me to really, you know, get over the fears that I had. Which one was like, for one, well, for another was that it would be a fun thing for us to do together.
yeah,
And the other thing is, it was like I was thinking to myself, when I had these thoughts of "Don't do it," look, it's scary, or you know, why put yourself out there like that? I was thinking like, what a waste of like me having Logan with all his abilities to do it all and to be like even willing, which that might be one of the biggest things, because you might have, you know, some may have all the skills and they might have all the knowledge to do something, but then another thing is for them to want to do it. And so, you know, from day one, from day zero, the moment I said it back in 2020, you know, you were down. And then when I told you again in December, once I had kind of just gotten a little bit over myself, and I told you, I said, my goal was to start like in January,
yeah.
like to record my first episode like in January of 2023. And you did everything so quick, and you're like, "No, we can record. Like we can record before."
I don't
And
even how did I don't even remember how this happened because I just remember I was like so motivated to get this started that I went like I was like just every day like prioritizing this to get it started, but I don't remember like what got me into that mode. Do you remember like the conversation we had?
I I don't actually remember the exact conversation. What I did tell you was that I wanted to get back. I wanted to get back on the idea of doing the podcast, and that I really wanted to do it, and that because I had even kind of planned already a little timeline, right? And that I wanted like to schedule my first guest by the first week of January. And I mean, I can't remember really our exact conversation, but I know you got everything ready
I think it
within
was
like 2 weeks.
I think it was closer to November because we recorded with your mom in
It
December.
was like mid-December.
Yeah, well, I think the conversation started in November maybe, and then we
Okay.
could because we recorded with your mom in December
Yeah.
actually.
Mhm. But you
Um,
got everything ready so quick, like, it must have been, like
I don't think it was quick, but it was the course of a couple of weeks, 2
yeah.
to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And so we
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 redid your entire office.
yeah, so like we had where we're sitting now, I think my desk was, right, it was against the wall. And so we kind of went, okay, how can this room, or I guess I did, how can this room be a podcast studio and my office, meaning I work from home on my 9 to 5 job, so I need to like have somewhere I can work, but how can it also simultaneously be the podcast studio? So that was
Yeah.
kind of our first studio iteration where it started. So we had I think it was this table, right? But it was like it was bigger because at first we set it up so that we could fit 4 people
Mhm.
at the table. Um and yeah, this table was like turned that way, right? And you
Yeah.
and the guests would face that way. And then I would sit over there. Um so that was like the start of it. And then we our first episode was with your mom, right?
Mhm.
Um so how did the first episode go with your mom? So we went from like ideation to actually doing it, right? Um, like how did that go to you? What were your like initial like learnings? Okay, I already asked 2 questions. That's another. And like, are there things that you kind of I don't know what you call it, like you prejudge some things about the podcasting process that you're like, oh wait, actually this or
Mm. My first experience on my very first episode with my mom, um, I would say I was more so worried of, like, controlling my emotion because I knew it was gonna be, like, emotional.
oh yeah, it was like very y'all cried.
So, like, it wasn't like I knew what to ask because I kind of know, although I did learn a lot of her story, in both podcasts that we recorded. I kind of knew kind of what to ask because I knew what was kind of coming and kind of like the key points or the key things in my mom's experience. So I wasn't too worried about what to ask. But I was afraid that I was just gonna bawl all episode long. And so in my head, I was trying to stay cool and like try to like breathe and try not to lose it because I feel like I ugly cry. And then when I cry, my whole face gets red, my eyes get red, and it's just not pretty. And like my nose is all over the place.
Were
It's
you nervous because of those things?
I was nervous because of that, yeah,
Yeah.
more so. I was like, I was nervous about, like, losing control of my emotions and, like, ugly cry more so, ugly cry on camera.
And I think the other thing with like having your mom on first, we did that because it's someone you're like familiar with.
And
So
comfortable.
it's not like some random stranger and then you're trying to sit here and talk like it's yeah, it's someone you're familiar with and comfortable with. So it goes back to that like getting better thing, right? Like we're starting with easy like people you know that are easy to talk to and we've kind of built up over time, but and then
Yeah.
what with that episode, what were some well I can talk about some of my learnings, right? And but like what were your learnings or here, let me talk about what I learned first is like I mean with that episode it was a lot of technical things, right? Like sorting out like we learned right away that like we had those mic stands that they would actually pick up like if you're like clicking on the table,
Oh,
so
tapping.
we could hear that a lot. So like immediately we bought
Yeah, because
like
my
felt
mom would
pads.
tap.
Yeah, she's like tapping on the table.
Uh-huh.
And so the mics picked that up.
So we're like, "That's a problem."
Yeah, and I s- and not like not that it has to be perfect, but just we don't want to. I mean, we want the audio to be crisp. That's like primary because you don't want like bad audio stuff to take you out of the podcast and ruin the listener's experience.
Well, the thing is that, like, if we really want to make this reach the most people, just to share the experiences and and overall, the end goal is to really just kind of come together and for people to just uh, even find some sort of comfort. I feel like a lot of us sometimes feel like we're the ones living the worst life possible, and and to kind of hear other people's stories, and if somebody can relate and figure out a way to get out of that situation by that story, that's always great. But overall, just to build a community of understanding, and just that people helping people, and for the people that offer services or some sort of sales or services, for them to be able to share those and share their stories of successful people and people just of all walks.
I think where you're going with that is like you don't want like audio issues to like
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
take you out of the story or distract you, right?
Right.
Something like
We
that.
really want to be people in tune and to enjoy it, right? Because I mean, unless it's a super like a video where I must listen to it to learn something, you know, um I'll listen to it, but anything else with bad audio quality, I will not touch it.
Yeah, yeah, because it's just it like bothers you, right? You're like
Yeah.
listening is like it's like nails on a chalkboard almost.
Yeah, and I say, like, some videos because there's some of Earl Nightingale that, it the audio is not great, but I'll still listen to it because what he says, it's, just mind-blowing, but that's, like, the only exception. Anything else, I just won't listen to.
And I think and I am gonna touch on like some of the technical stuff because I think this episode could be helpful for people that like do want to start a podcast. So I can kind of weave some of the details in. So we established like we had the two Rode pod mics. We had the Rodecaster, and I forgot we because we wanted to do video. Um, I had actually went and bought another camera, right, so that we could have multiple angles. And like I found this camera on a Facebook Marketplace used. It's a great deal. I actually drove. I don't know. It was like 2 or 3 hours into East Texas to meet this guy at a like a not great gas station. And I wanted to meet him inside, and when I got there, he wanted to meet outside, and I had like $1,000 for the camera in cash, so I was a little nervous, but it worked out. The camera is right there. Um, so, anyways, sidebar. We got the camera. We also got a switcher for the cameras. It's called an ATEM Mini Pro ISO. And so what that does is allows us to essentially edit the podcast in real time. Like that's what we have your brother doing right now. Normally I'm switching the camera angles. Um, and then we did start out with with an iPhone camera too, right?
Mhm.
So we had and some people may remember this. We had a like basically in the corner of the room we had an iPhone camera um, connected to the ATEM, and I think the reason we ended up taking that out, I think we took it out when we changed sets, because it didn't look right, and we had a lot of like technical issues with that. That is like an option, right? If someone wants to do a video podcast, like literally you have a phone. That's like all you need technically.
Right.
Um, so that was our first episode. That was the equipment we had, and I think so. We recorded the episode, and then it's like I think at that point we hadn't even created like a Spotify, or I hadn't created a Spotify account. I don't think we even had like the pages set up. I don't even know if we had a name at that point. Like we just recorded the episode, and then it's like, well, okay, we recorded it. Now we have to post it. Um so then we started going through that process, right?
Mhm.
Um so I do want to touch on the name. How did we come up with the name,
Well,
and what is it? What's the
before that, speaking of video, um, that was kind of like a something we had to kind of work through even back in 2020, and we touched base. here again right before we started of doing video because you wanted to just do audio.
Oh yeah, because it would be like easier. It was my way of like making it easier.
And so, and I was like, well, there would be no video, which it's less intimidating. But it's like being an like an avid podcast listener and a watcher at times. Like I couldn't see the value. Like I just thought just doing it was going to be worthless. Like it was just not even do it.
Well, I think for you too, half of the value of the podcast is getting content for social media, right?
Oh,
And
right.
with audio, it's like, well, you could post a audio clip, but it just and people I've seen people do it and they just like put like a picture or something. It's like weird, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, video, I mean, if it's audio only, it's real like technically it's very simple,
I
but
guess that was your fear of saying, "Hey, hold on, this
yeah.
whole video thing is a little crazy."
Yeah, yeah, it adds a lot of like other
Oh, look
extra
at you.
factors. What?
Sneaky, sneaky.
No, so video was yeah, so it's not just an audio podcast, it's a video and audio podcast.
Right.
And while we're on that topic, we did people probably see this and they're like, "What the hell? Like, why are they shooting vertical?" This was like a decision we made. Like the cameras are literally sideways to shoot vertical, just because of the you like the clips. We can retain video quality, and we don't have to crop the things. And what we found is that like if you're on like most people aren't sitting at a TV watching a podcast anyways, and if you're on your phone, the platforms will actually play the video vertical. So it works. I don't think I've seen anyone do it. The only downside is that we can't do a good like wide shot. It just looks weird. That's why we like took out the iPhone camera for this set because you could see like the ceiling and the table, and we're like barely in the middle. But I like the upside, so
Coming soon.
yeah, maybe.
In our next studio.
Yeah, maybe. So that's the video aspect, and so the name. I know for a while you wanted to do like some weird Spanish name like Tecarizi Con Mayra or something.
Oh, take it take it easy. Like it was like the way it's pronounced. It's like the way I guess it's just like if you're speaking Spanish, reading take it easy, it would be like take it easy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Take it easy con Mayra.
I probably told you that was corny.
Yeah, I don't think you were too sold on that.
Yeah. So then how did we get to like this name?
Um, well, I wanted the title to be more along the lines of like the podcast being a conversation, right? Because the whole idea of the podcast is a conversation. So, and it's like, there's many things that are like used over and over, very popular, but then I kind of wanted something that would be also kind of catchy, or that would be easy to stick
When
on
you say
people.
popular, you mean that on social media there are already like or not? Well, there are already podcasts with those names essentially.
Yeah, so I would look on. I looked at social media, and especially on Spotify. I would look up titles that I would think of, and if it was like chatting or talking or like oh like chatting, for example, I chatting with Myra, and so like those kind of common just words that were very popular. And what did I use? I might have used, I don't know if I got it from the internet or something, but I was trying to like even research words that were related to like a conversation or talking. And so somehow, I think somewhere along those lines, I came up with the powwow.
Well, yeah. So it's essentially like sitting around a fire,
Yeah,
talking with people, right?
right. Right.
Which is or it's
And I
also
think it comes from like Indians or something, which I mean, I'm not an Indian, so if you're Indian and you're offended, I'm sorry. Um um, but yeah, I mean, essentially that's the idea. It's like you're sitting around a fire, which our logo is a fire.
Yeah, yeah.
Which funny enough, when you started your company a few when like 8 years
Oh,
ago,
you're talking about wild.
wildfire.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
was it was also a fire logo, so I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah, when I created the Pow Wow logo, I just like copy and pasted it.
Really?
No.
Oh. Uh, so but yeah, I was like chatting around a fire or something, and
And what did the why would you pick gold for the color?
I think I just really gravitated towards it.
Okay.
I just
Okay.
like it looked good.
It's like a gold beige color. And then I had done a photo
It
shoot of
like
you.
looks nice, and then it looks like I just I really like it. Like it attracts me.
I don't know if you remember, I did that photo shoot of you in December with
Mhm.
a beige background. And
Mhm.
it like matches but that was before we had picked the color and the name and everything. So I
Right.
don't know if I think that had something to do with it.
Probably.
But I think one of the like kind of one of the
It was your golden hair.
oh, okay. But I think like one of the takeaways from like the start of the podcast, the first episode is like we just did it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we hadn't even created the accounts. I don't think we had a name. Like like we just did it and we put it out there.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is,
You were a big pusher too because I'm like, "No, we can wait." And you're like, "No, we got to do it now. Why wait?" You were like, "Why wait? Why wait?" And I was like, I don't have a good comeback. Why wait? So then we did it.
yeah, and it's like we overhedge like the like value. I think we overhedge like trying to be perfect, like we as people, right? Like we're gonna do this thing and it has to be perfect. And I have to spend all this time researching and planning and prepping. But if you look at like these, I know we're not a startup, but if you look at these successful startups, like a lot of them, like Uber, like they didn't even, I don't even think they started as Uber. Like they had a completely different name. So that's kind of something I always think of. It's like they start their company and they iterate over time. They get feedback. They get feedback from the users. They're basically learning while they're going. And essentially, like I wanted to like apply that to the podcast, and I think that's why I'm like, let's just start. Um, and then like, yeah, here we are, and things are like already way different. 20
Oh,
20
yeah.
episodes deep, 6 months later. Again, we'll get to like some of the changes, but um, I don't even know where I was taking this.
See, like I don't even think I could have sat here 6 months ago and just like be comfortable speaking. Like just 6 months ago.
But
Um
you did. You started the podcast.
well,
You mean you're
no,
comfortable
like me.
now, and then you weren't back then, or what?
Well, I mean, I'm much more comfortable now, but me talking about me. You know what I mean? Like it's
Oh,
easier
like
for
me
me
and oh, like you.
to talk to someone and get for me to hear their stories, which they're doing most of the talking. I just got to come up with the questions
Right, right.
versus me sitting here and actually talking about my experience. Like I would have been like super nervous, I think.
Oh, okay.
Like even just 6 months ago.
Like you wouldn't have been able to do this 6 months ago.
No, I would have been really nervous,
And
which I'm not.
yeah, yeah. Which like I'm nervous because this is my first time on camera.
I was actually really happy that you suggested we do this because, I'm like, now he's gonna see and he's gonna not only just see, but he's gonna feel and he's gonna experience being like sitting in the chair talking.
Yeah,
So I was
it's
really happy for you to get that experience.
I think as like the producer, yes, like getting this experience. And so we're gonna do this episode, and then we did talk about how like you will interview me one day, maybe in like 5 to 10 years.
What?
Maybe 5 to 10 months. We'll see. So this is like a good like intro for me getting behind the camera.
Well, you're really good. You're like a natural.
Oh, thank you. That
Seriously.
means a lot coming from you.
Oh, stop.
No, I'm serious. I'm just bad at giving compliments.
Oh.
No, I mean like like you are much more experienced than me at this. So
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, honestly, That's crazy. You're like a natural.
But all right, let's stop with the ego stroking. And speaking of ego stroking, I just want to kind of like put it out there. Like we're not trying to like sit here and be like, oh, like we did all these, we're so successful, this, that. Like we're just being transparent about our podcasting process, how things got started, and where we're at now.
And it's fun. I think it's like aside from that, I think it's great for us. It'll be fun for us to kind of look back and kind of thank ourselves for doing this and kind of capturing it because it's different when time goes by, like
Yeah,
longer time. It's
yeah,
like you don't really remember everything.
yeah,
And so like it's kind of like a checkpoint and right now I think right now there's value, but I think in the years to come I think it's gonna have even more value.
yeah. It'd be cool. Like Maddie can like see us.
You were speaking of one of the biggest forces for me to say yes to doing the podcast. I mean, everything was kind of building up right through the years, but even like right there towards the end, um, I was thinking like if I want to teach my daughter how to just kind of work for the things that she wants and to be courageous and like to keep going, to not give up. I was like I have to be the example. And I think I was listening to something that you have to be the role model, right? And so like when I was thinking about that, I'm like, oh gosh, like I just saw myself like in the mirror and I'm like, God, I'm being such a coward. And if I want to teach my daughter how not to be a coward, I need to step out of that. And that was one of the biggest at the end for me to say, okay, let's do it. And we're doing it.
Yeah, it's like leading by example, and kids are like sponges, and they emulate
Right.
their parents. So
So I was like, what a hypocrite am I going to be to try to teach my daughter something when or to not be like a coward and I'm being a coward myself.
yeah, yeah. And I did have another like little technical detail I wanted to sprinkle in. Like you're talking about um, like her seeing this stuff like years down the line. It's funny we're going from these like emotional conversations, and I'm like trying to put these in here. So, but I'll give you a break while you sip your water.
Oh,
So
thank you.
like so um, small technical detail. I don't know. I think we did start with this. So the podcast files are about 150 gigabytes, and it's important that we want to save the files. We do export them, post them online, but like we don't know what YouTube's going to do with them. So we do want to save the files. So I have a NAS, which is it's a little like server, which has multiple.
Yes, he's a nerd and he has his own server at home. Sorry, continue.
So for the nerds out there, I have a little server. It's called a NAS, and it has two hard drives in it. Well, it has more now, but it has room for many hard drives, and it essentially replicates. They're like one's a copy of the other. So if one goes bad, we always have the other one. So after every episode, I take the memory cards and I literally like transfer them to the NAS right away, so they're backed up instantly. And we've had no like issues so far with like losing like files or anything.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was like one thing. The other thing I was thinking of, which is interesting, is like I think going back to like the idea of like perfection is that I think when we started, it was like it was the quality was like okay. It was decent, right?
Yeah, it was good.
Whereas now I think it's very good, like very crisp. But the thing is that actually, um, if we look at our most viewed episode, I think it's your mom's, like one of our first episodes. And so that's kind of it's like just it goes back to just doing it right
Mhm.
in our and then like funny enough the only like super viral like short we've got, which has 4 million views on TikTok, that was like literally there were pieces of foam behind you and Aaron. It was like we were in a transition state between the sets,
Mhm.
And so, like, yes, these things matter, but like doing it and like playing the game, like that matters more than quality, right?
Mm.
Is so it's like, yes, the quality does matter over time and it's good and great and everything, but just doing it, right? Like your mom's episode has hundreds of views and most of our episodes will get like around 100 across all platforms.
Mhm.
So basically after your mom's episode, we recorded that it's like November, December
It was
last year.
December.
We went on vacation, come back, we post it, um and
No,
then
we recorded 2 in December
your mom's and Ivan's
in Ivan's.
because we essentially like we wanted to have a buffer, right, of episodes. So we post on Thursdays. At the time we were doing weekly, and we wanted to have like a 3 or 4 episode buffer, right?
Mhm.
So that each week we're not like recording and then posting it, right? We're like prepping an episode from the past for that week. Um, and that was a good like right from the rip. That was obviously the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that buffer gives us time. Like if we wanted to go on vacation or something, we have an episode buffer. Or like if we like can't record because we're both busy, we have full time jobs. We have that episode buffer. Um, and so like right away we're like we're trying to learn how to work with each other. And I think in kind of yeah, how to make decisions because we're a couple, we're married, but we also like I don't want to call this like a business, but it's like a thing we're doing together,
It's a
right?
b I mean, I think it's relating to, like, it's a responsibility, right? It's just
And so I like I went to because I think we had like little mini disagreements, and I asked Jonathan, who was he was on 2 episodes ago. I'm like, you know,
episode 20.
you and your wife Kelsey, you work together. Like, how do you guys manage that and not like kill each other? And so he said like that they have like clear responsibilities essentially, and like somebody if like somebody has um essentially like final say over something. So then I don't know like when specifically this was, but at some point I told you like that you have final say over everything. Um and then we kind of started divvying out how we do the shorts, right? And kind of our process. So um, initially, we both with the Spanish episodes, you would review them, right?
Mhm.
But we would both review the episodes, and you would mark where you want me to create shorts. Um, and I would like create all these shorts. I think initially we would do 7 because we were posting every week.
No, we would post, like, that was one of the things we were kinda talking through. We're disagreeing because I wanted to do, like, 1 every day or 1 every other day at first, but you wanted to do, like, 3 total
Oh,
for
that's
a
right.
week.
Yeah, I wanted to do like
Like,
two.
just 3, like,
Yeah,
2 or
yeah, yeah,
3
yeah,
reels
yeah, yeah.
for the week, 1 week. So today, we're doing 1 reel every day
2 weeks,
for 2
so
weeks,
14.
so 14.
Yeah, yeah.
And then when we started, you wanted to do 3. And I was like, we got to do, I mean, not only just to just post on social media, but I'm like, there is so much good information or so much good content that even just that clip, it's very helpful to for other people to see it or to hear it. Um, and so, not just not just to get the posting reps in, but more so to share more of the episode. So that was kind of like one of the things. You just wanted to do 3 and I wanted to do more. Um, and then I kind of went crazy and I was like, okay, we got to do 2 a day and we went every other week. So that would have been, what,
28.
28.
Which I think we did with Coach Alvarez,
Yeah,
right?
that was when I
Like,
was wanting to go that route and I was
yeah,
pushing it hard.
yeah. Which those did good. I think there's a point where because you're posting on multiple platforms, I think there's a point for you where it's like it's too much, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have
Yeah.
other responsibilities in your life, so you had to, like we were trying to find a balance, right,
A
too,
balance, right.
because, yeah, if you go too hard, too fast, right, you're gonna burn out, and you don't want that. So I think today we're doing 1 a day. Well, yeah, we just said that, 1 a day for 14 days, and it's a good balance,
Oh
right?
yeah. I mean, at this point, but posting those 2 a day, it really kind of helps me get better and faster because at first when I first started posting reels, it would take me forever even to just kind of think about what I was going to post and to doing it in each platform. And then I started doing it on my phone. Now I just do it from my computer because it's a lot faster. S-
And I think that
So,
applies to, like, even, the editing. Like, at first, it took me, like, a very long time to edit, and I'm, like, figuring out, like, what the heck I'm even doing. So,
a
like
whole new system
yeah,
program you're
yeah.
using.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so now I have, like, essentially everything's, like, like, presets, so I drop it in, and I apply, like, audio presets and video presets, and, um
Yeah.
anyways,
So,
you were gonna say something else?
no, but basically, it's just the repetition. Even when I was posting Coach Alvarez for 2 a day, I didn't even have, like, the kind of cadence I have now, but I think it helped me get here because that was constantly on my mind. I had to constantly do it, and I think that about then is when I switched over to my computer, so it was around that time or maybe after him. And then because I was trying different programs to schedule them, like Zoho and um, some of the other like programs.
Hootsuite.
Yeah, where you basically pay a service and you upload your video and get it scheduled easier. But
Which none of those are any good, essentially,
none of
which is
those are
crazy.
good for video. I mean, for posting like posts, like they all work great, but to post reels, they just didn't work out at all. So, which was fine. I was able to try that out and figured out it didn't work. And now I do it very quickly and I get them scheduled actually. So that saves me a lot more time.
Yeah, yeah, and that's, like it goes back to, like, your original idea for the podcast and or your original thought of, like, just repetition, like, you've gotten
Mhm.
better, I've gotten, faster at editing, and I've kind of learned like, we've learned how to work together, so we both have, like, clear, delineations of responsibility, so I handle, like, the technical side, and we also found that it's kinda redundant, like, usually the podcasts are 3 hours, and we found that it's redundant for both of us to listen to them, because at first, I would listen for audio stuff, and at first, the audio was different, we had like, we the mics were farther away, we had less, like, noise, canceling stuff, so the audio wasn't as great. So I would like listen for like our dogs. You could hear the dogs knocking on the back door and or walking by and stuff. So, well, really, my point is we found that it's redundant for both of us to listen to the whole episode.
Mhm.
So we ended up choosing that like you would do that, and you would also we'd do a we use DaVinci Resolve, which is like an editing program, and you pick essentially mark what you want to be shorts.
Yeah.
Um, and we've had like little changes to that process over time, but we found that that works really well for us. So like um, we're releasing an episode this Thursday, so I'll have that episode ready for you to review by like tomorrow, and then you'll go until Tuesday, like listening to it. You'll notate like anything that needs cut out. You'll notate shorts, and then I'll get it. And usually I'll have it up by and ready by Wednesday and like processing. Um,
Yep. Yeah.
anyways, going back to your mom's episode, I think we learned a lot from that episode. I keep saying this, but and one of the things was like that we found that we were kind of shocked by, or you were, was that people you like well you tell me right like people would go to your mom and your mom had a lot of people reach out to her essentially.
So many people reached out to my mom. Just, even people. that are very close or were very close at some point, or extended family, friends, cousins. Um, and so even, even some of my friends are like, "Hey, you like your mom like was so gutsy, like to just sit there and she was so comfortable and just spoke away about her life." And people, even her best friend from her entire lifetime, which happens to be also my godmother, she was saying how like they were best friends, and even her didn't even know like a lot of what my mom went through. And so I think that actually got them a little bit closer. I know that they've been like much more in touch and they have plans to see each other and whatever, but I think, at that point she broke down and, confessed to my mom a lot of things about her and just opened up. Other people did the same thing. So, like, yeah, the amount of feedback was overwhelming. It was like great. I was like, it was such a joyful, and even like thinking about it, like today, it's like it brings me still joy,
Yeah.
just thinking about it.
Yeah. And I think part of it too, I think your mom is like a really good like like talker, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't understand it because it was in Spanish, but I get that sense.
Mhm.
And that's another thing we're doing is we release English and Spanish episodes. We actually haven't done a Spanish one in a while. Um, and I think we're still working through what that looks like, but the titles they say English or Spanish, so then obviously they're in English or Spanish.
Yeah.
With you being bilingual, you have that. Um,
They would be in French if I knew how to speak French too.
it's like you have that background. Your family, a lot of the people you were like referencing earlier, they speak Spanish.
Mhm.
Um, but then on like the business side or like jujitsu, a lot of the people speak English. So
In business, tons of great people.
I think that works out because that's like that's just who you are, right? We're not trying to rabbit hole the podcast into this thing of English or Spanish, and at least for now.
Yeah,
Right now, it's both.
right. No, I mean it is, and it just depends on also the guests that want to join. I mean that accept my invite. Some people are afraid, and that's completely understandable. As I was afraid before starting it,
Right.
you know, um, and so, and I find that, it's like I've gotten much more rejections on the Spanish invites than on the English invites.
Why do you think that is?
Fear.
You think it's the you think it's correlated to the language, or do you think it's a coincidence?
No, I think it's just a cultural thing.
Okay.
I think it's more so, I think it's like a chain that, sometimes generations carry and different groups of people carry,
Mm-hmm.
of like different types of fear. And one of the biggest ones, it's like, what are people gonna think?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think that's true in probably every race. But I mean, I'm just speaking from like where I come from. That's very apparent. And I think it's even affected me. Hence, again, the reason why I was so hesitant on starting was, what are people going to say? Uh, and so, or even just not, I don't know, it's many things, but I think is at the end of the day, it's fear.
Well, it's like for you went through that fear, but then you realize like once you do it that it's actually okay, it's not that scary. And then actually you come out on the other side, you feel better that you like got over that fear.
Well, the thing is that I understand it through different perspectives, right? So, like, even like through jujitsu, for example, right? You can't get better if you don't practice it. If you don't train, um, like even a white belt alone, it's like far. They're already so like with just a little bit of knowledge, they already know so much more than the regular individual that if something was to happen out on the street, that individual would probably be on the downside,
And
regardless of their strength and muscles.
the white belt is like the lowest belt.
And the white belt is a
Or that's
starting
just when you
belt.
start. Yeah, yeah.
That's where you start, basically. So, when I think about that perspective, and then I think about and I listen to a lot of things that constantly bring to my attention fears and my fears. And I understand that they're gonna be there because it's also unrealistic for someone to say, I have no fears. Like, that's just unrealistic. But the difference is the thing that differs, everybody has fears, but what makes somebody different from the other, it's how you handle those. So you either ignore them or hide from them and suppress those feelings and run away essentially from those fears to something comfortable and cozy, or you kind of face them. And there's many different levels, right, depending on what the task is or what the challenge is. But at the end of the day, there's fears for everyone. The difference is how you handle them.
Yeah, and I think there's probably like a correlation between
I don't
um
even know how I got on that tangent, by the way.
well, I was just talking about
Oh, fears.
your experience with fear in the podcast, because you went through that same
Hmm.
thing, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. My point was understanding different perspectives helps. Like different perspectives help new new fears or new things. You know what I mean. So like, if I think about a fear, if I think, well, like same thing as basketball. If I don't know how to dribble, if I just practice dribbling, I'll get better. And I went through that experience actually myself. So when I think about something, I just compare it and I understand that it's just momentarily and it's part of the process.
Well, the thing too is that fear is a physiological response. Like we used to be hunter gatherers, and we would get scared about um, a giant bison, right? Or
Right.
like a cougar or some like an animal. Like you
Right.
needed that fears and or those fears, and
To survive.
to survive, and we still have those today, but we get fearful over like dumb stuff like being on a podcast. So we get that
Right.
physiological response, and it's like it's critical to know like, oh, like this fear is like it's not me, it's like my body, and like
Mhm.
what's baked into me, it's telling me I should fear this. I'm wanting to go back to my comfort,
Mhm.
like what's comfortable to me. And probably what you'll find is that there's a high correlation of, and this is however you define success, but there's a high correlation with success and people that like get over their fears or people that face their fears, right? And I
Mhm.
don't just mean financial, right? Could be many different things,
Yeah.
however you define it. But you were gonna say something?
I think so, but I forgot.
All right.
um, I was gonna say something actually. Um,
Was it about the fears or hunter gatherer thing,
um,
and that like the physiological response?
no, one of the things that I think about, um, oh yes, perspective. I was kind of going back with the whole thing that you're talking about is that um how we see something and how it actually is. Like we're always going to see something in like in our perspective or in our way, but almost always it's not how it is. It's like what is, it's usually like we're usually thinking about a situation a certain way and it's usually not how it is.
There's some
So how we see something doesn't mean that's how it is. And most almost always it's not how it is.
there's something called like I don't know the exact, like it's like your cone of reality. If you think of it like a cone, right? Or like if I had a traffic cone right here, like I'm not seeing, I'm just seeing a limited viewpoint
Mm,
of the world, right? Like my perception of reality is not actual reality, the actual
Exactly.
reality of the world. It's just my experience, my
Right.
like lived experience in the world. Um, and there's a lot of people that I think there's a lot of people that think that their perception of reality is the way things are, right?
Right. Yeah, essentially what they're thinking of how a situation is, they make it a fact when, in reality it could be just something completely different.
Or were you like going somewhere with that, or were you just
I'm not sure.
okay?
I think it was I think it was like somewhere along the lines where you were talking and you said something that sparked that, but
Okay. Well, going back to your mom's episode, um, what were like some of if you can remember really, because I know we're 22 episodes deep now. What were like some of the learnings that you took from that and like started up as a host, podcast host, and started applying to, or and maybe it's like better phrased as, over the first couple of episodes, what were some of your learnings that you like took forward?
mm, oh, well, I would say like at first there was a particular episode towards the beginning, might have been Ivan's actually, where you said it was kind of confusing because I didn't really like we were kind of like all over the way. So one of the things that I learned and even actually made it easier as I'm recording podcasts is that if I think about it just in chronological order and try to come back like in we're always going to just kind of branch out in conversations but like to bring it back.
I mean, like as you're talking through their story, like you
Right.
would bring it back to like a given point in time.
Well, at first I wouldn't.
Oh, okay, okay.
And so, and I think, and I mean, I think initially that was the idea, but I didn't really have it ingrained, I guess. And obviously it didn't come off in one of the episodes. And you said it might have been a little bit confusing
Oh, okay. And,
because we're kind of like all over the place.
it depends. Like it depends on the podcast, right? But I think for yours,
But even
it's
it made it easier for me.
yeah, yeah. And as a listener, it's probably good too. What?
So yeah, that was one. One of them that I'm still even 22 episodes in, kind of getting better at like the intro and the just like the end of the podcast. Um, so that's something that's is still I think a work in progress. The last one that I did, I felt much better, but I still feel there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done in a lot of ways, but one of the other things that I remember was that I kind of fixed as I was editing and from like listening to myself as I was editing the podcast was how I would say like wow and
Oh yeah.
I don't know like and it wasn't it was maybe it was just in the moment but it made me by me reviewing myself it made me aware of it and I didn't like it.
I think that was one of my pieces of feedback to you, in my cone of reality, was that like I feel like a podcast it is a conversation, but there's little nuances which make it different as a listener, because it's not it is a conversation, but the thing is someone's listening to it, right, and
Right.
it's recorded. So part of it was like I was like, you don't have to acknowledge everything they say with and say like or even that, right? Like
Right.
you don't have to say yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
or wow to like everything they say.
Right. Not to everything.
And it just makes it cleaner. It's not like I was giving you a hard time. I think it just makes it cleaner as a listener.
Mhm. Yeah, well, the feedback is definitely needed to get better and just like anything else.
Yeah, I think and one of the things I'm thinking of right now is like I need a pen and paper because I don't know how you do this because you don't have a tablet or anything, and I'm sitting here like trying to keep questions in my head and not forget them, and they start stacking up, and I forget them.
Yes. No, I don't struggle much with it,
Yeah,
but I'm glad you're in that chair with that job so that you can understand better sometimes.
Yeah, makes me more yeah, understanding.
Compassionate.
So so am I not compassionate?
It's different. It's different because like when you're giving feedback, it's kind of like if you're giving me like mechanical car advice. Like I'm not really like it has some value because I care about what you say, but it doesn't really have much value because you've never done it, right? So like
My feedback has no value?
no, that's not what I said. I said it has some value.
Yeah.
But like if you're experienced in it, now it's gold.
Yeah.
Because you've been through it, right? So like if I need any sort of technical advice, like you're gold, like because whatever you say, I'm gonna 100% believe because you're the expert. I'm not.
Right.
But like when sometimes when you give me like some, which a lot of the feedback you give me is good, or when you give me advice, I would say not feedback, but more so advice. It's like it's nice that now you're sitting there so you can I still want the advice. I still want it all. I'm just saying I'm happy that you're experiencing it.
It's like this makes me less of an armchair quarterback, like the guy sitting on the couch, like saying what the quarterback should be doing in a football game. So
So,
glad I'm sitting in this chair makes me less of an armchair quarterback. Funny how
yes.
that works.
Uh-huh.
What else? What other learnings have you had so far?
Um
And I'd say as a host, really, like as running the podcast and talking to people and moving through these conversations.
well, I would say um like reaching out to people and explaining to people like when I'm inviting them to be a guest, I feel like at first I would struggle a little bit more because I mean, I guess it's more so because I knew I was starting and I was pitching something that was very new.
Yeah.
It was I feel like I would talk more and try to sell them more on when I was inviting them.
I feel like especially when there wasn't like we hadn't even published anything,
Right.
whereas now people can you go, here's my links, this
Right.
is yeah.
And it's easier for me to even just talk about it now as I'm talking to people. Like it's much easier. So that's something that I've learned. And I'm still getting better at it, but I can definitely see I can feel the difference. Even just my um like how I feel my what's the word? My
Oh
confidence.
yeah,
Yeah.
like as a host.
As yeah, and talking to people and inviting them, um, because at first I would think things like, well, what might they think? Again, that that chain. It's like, what will they think? Like, this is barely starting. Um, but then, but now, I've gained the confidence for one, and two, um, I feel like even stronger than the beginning of why I'm doing this. And it's fun. It's fun. So like versus saying something like, well, we want to share your story or whatever. Um, I know the value of it and I know how fun it is and I know how much they're going to enjoy it because every single person that sat here like I've gotten they say it but even without them saying it I've gotten the feeling that they had a good time.
Yeah, they even say like it's been multiple people. They say it was like
Almost everyone.
they say that, but they also say that it was like therapeutic, right?
Right. Yes, many people. And a lot of them have said, it was like um, it was like enlightening and better than they expected. So some people have been very courageous and said things they've never shared with anybody else other than maybe their partner
Yeah.
or close family. So, I really value that and I'm very grateful that they are able to open that and I'm happy that they feel comfortable sharing it. You know what I mean? Because It's like they feel comfortable enough to say it, and it's a very big moment for them because they're essentially opening up to the world because it's not you don't it's not very common for anybody to just have a podcast and talk to the regular people, right? So
Right.
this is special in that way that it's not a podcast with celebrities that we hear over and over again. It's like real people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it goes to show like just the power of this podcast, but just podcasting in general is that, we're so distracted with our phones these
Mhm.
days and social media. And even this week, like I started using some of the iPhone tools of like limiting my screen time. And I was telling you on Monday that I picked on Monday evening and it must have been like 5 p.m., right? So the day wasn't even over. And I had picked up my phone 240 times that day, but I wasn't letting myself get on social media until like 6 p.m. So like I don't even, me, Logan doesn't even say to pick up my phone. It just, my brain or my body just picks it up and
It's
opens
not a habit.
Twitter or something. Um, but my point is that like sitting down, I mean, usually we take the guest's phone because we had some like wire interference. So like their phone is like 10 feet from them at my desk. So it just goes to show the power of like uninterrupted conversation. Um,
They're so much fun. I have so much fun every single time I get to chat with someone,
yeah,
including you right now.
yeah. And it's like the power of like uninterrupted conversation and really getting down, sitting there and talking to people. Probably the only other thing like it is like therapy, like talking to a therapist, right?
Right.
um except I don't, maybe I don't know, maybe, I don't know, you're not a therapist, but it's like
Well,
people say
and
it.
it's like somebody that has a best friend. It's just someone that, you kind of feel comfortable with. And
And I mean that's what you tell people, right? Is like we're just gonna sit down and talk
yeah,
about you.
right. Get to know them better. Um, One of the things I was going to say, speaking of social media, was like when I went in my like weight loss journey, I was like so serious that I decided to get rid of everything social, like not one platform. And so I was outside the social life for like over like a year and a half when I decided to kind of get back in touch with the world. And when I like every I understood the whole time I kind of need social media because it's beneficial for me being a real estate agent. Um Thank God. I mean, I've never relied on it, but I understood that it's important, and I was kind of over that already. I kind of already like the reason why I left social media was already had already kind of reached that goal, right? Which was losing weight.
Hmm.
So then coming back, I'm thinking like God, like I was so used to not I still to this day I'm not really on it often enough, and I try to be and connect with people because I do want to and I think it's important. But when I was thinking, okay, I need to post, but I'm like, what do I post that it's not stupid and silly and it's just stuff that's genuine,
Hmm.
right? Stuff that I like or that I'm interested in, or just something that helps others. So, even in business, like whatever I post, I want to make sure it's like if it's I want to make sure it's worth posting. And if somebody's like just scrolling on social media, like that is what they do all day long, 24/7. To at least post something that is also helpful for them if it kind of ends up in their screen. So instead of just posting stupid stuff, it's like post something that it's worth posting.
Mm. You mean like for the podcast or your personal?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Yeah. So like the podcast, it was like worth posting. Even in business, I try to post only what I think it's something someone will learn from that, or it's informational, or it's. We were talking about social media.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so the podcast, we did your mom's episode. Um, we're 20 episodes deep now. Like where so present state, we revamped the studio to kind of cover um what was it funny?
Because the revamping the studio was a whole project.
I think I was confusing the initial setup and then revamping it. I think the initial setup took like 2 weeks, but revamping it took like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I think we had a nice buffer, so we were able to keep like we never missed a beat essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Um we,
Consistency.
we just lost our buffer at the time. Um and some of the things we
But
want.
it was planned for.
Yes, because it gave me time to revamp and
Mm-hmm.
like not take days off work. Like I still did my day job. Um, and some of the things we wanted to address were, I think, with the shorts, not the short, the video, like we had the blue and the purple, and it would like just it would spill onto the guests like head, like you could see the blue and purple light on their head, so it just looked kind of weird. But at first it looked cool, but then now it's like all right. So now everything is just like grayscale, is everything's like black, and then the lights are they're just orange essentially.
I feel like it's nice because the viewer, the person, it's really it's very clear, and it's like the spotlight when you're watching the video.
Yeah, yeah, it's less less
Less
distracting.
noise.
Yeah, yeah, and the other piece that we wanted to address, I mean the chairs. So people
Mm-hmm.
may have noticed we have different chairs now. So I would roll over your chair from our bedroom, your desk chair. I'd roll over my desk chair to the podcast set, and then I would sit in like a folding chair. So like 3 hours in, I'd be in pain essentially. I'm sitting in a folding chair for 3 hours. So we got these chairs, which have
They're
been great.
comfortable.
Yeah, yeah. And then like while we were at it, we went ahead and upgraded the mics and the mic
Mm-hmm.
stands um because we had part of it was echo, um was that the other mics they picked up a lot of echo and table noise too. So like these like we don't have those felt pads anymore, but you don't actually get the table thumping as badly.
Mm-hmm.
And then if someone wants to like sit back with these mic stands, that's another um, nice thing.
Nice feature.
And then obviously the soundproofing to reduce the echo. So it's not on camera, but we have basically blankets hanging up or sound blankets, moving blankets, which block sound. So there's not as much echo.
Yeah.
And I think that was mostly like we were doing episodes over time, and I started creating a list of things I wanted to change, and eventually that list was like very long. So I'm like, all right, we need to just do all this.
Yeah. Well, and at first too, we recorded while Madison was in the house. My aunt was taking care of her in the room. We're like, oh, just kind of stay in the room. But then she'd get loud and we could hear it.
Oh yeah,
So then, the other adjustment we made was like Madison has to be at grandma's when we're recording
yeah,
because she's loud.
yeah, yeah. And then now she's walking, so
Oh
she'd probably
gosh.
just walk over to the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
She's
the
unstoppable.
only way she'll stay is if we build a little studio in the back, and then we can like keep her in the house or something.
Yeah. Not in the same room or under the same roof.
I think that's most of the changes. We painted the room black,
Hmm.
and then the background now is it's doubles as soundproofing and it looks kind of cool. So bought all these pads on Amazon, like acoustic pads or whatever, foam pads.
Yeah.
Um, so that's like present state um, podcast. We're doing. Uh, we found that what like we would record for 3 hours. We'd release an episode every week, but um, what was your what went into the decision to go from weekly to like to biweekly episodes?
Well, I think it was a number of things. One of them, it's some of the feedback that I would get would be that they're too long and they would say, "Hey, well, not that they're too long, but they were long enough to where it would take them a couple weeks to get through the whole episode." So, that was one of the considerations. Another one was, um, I think it was we were too pressured every week too. It was like back to back to back to back, and then on top of that, handling all the other side things we got going on in our personal lives.
Yeah.
Um, and so just handling all of that um was a reason, and they all kind of go hand in hand. Another one was by doing it 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, we can put out more shorts, which we can, kind of bring the podcast closer to other people. So we can post more shorts by doing it every other week.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the critical things really is that the shorts we're not like overhedging like that the podcast itself is just going to grow, which it probably would, but I think adding on the shorts will kind of helps the growth and the trajectory of the growth. It helps it to grow faster, right? So we
Definitely.
would record for 3 hours, we'd have all this content, and then we would only post like seven
Right.
shorts.
It was like a waste
Yeah, yeah,
almost. So all of those things combined, it was like the logical reason was to do it like every other week. It would have there's more benefits, it's less stress. And now it's like a lot of fun, but I am glad though that we started putting out every week because that really got us to moving faster.
that
Like
yeah.
we had to act fast.
Yeah, and then at that point, it made us get better at podcasting
Yeah.
quickly, essentially,
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
because now like at first it felt like we were recording all like we were basically at first it felt like we were working on the podcast all the time.
Yeah.
Now it feels like we work on it on the side here and there, essentially.
Right. It's definitely been better, in the sense of we can do more with our personal lives, with business, with personal, family, and with our hobbies, which you also have your other hobbies. So just being able to do what we want to do and just structuring it in a way that we can do it all. And the other thing too, it was like, why do it every week, when we know all these things? Plus, we want to do this for the long run, right? So it's not like, what's the rush to get one every week out?
Right, right. This sets us up bi-weekly episodes. It sets us up for the long run, not to get burnout and to
Not to
continue
get
doing
burnt out.
this.
Right.
And that does take me to like where what are your hopes for this for the future, and like where do you see this going over the next months to years?
I really have, for the podcast itself, I don't know, and I really don't want to think about, um like, I know I understand what the possibilities are, but I don't want to get clingy on any of them. I know that it has potential for growth, and I know it can turn into a lot of things. But some of the things that I am very excited about, continuing doing the podcast, is just overall my personal growth. Like, even just by listening to myself every other week, and how I'm having conversations with people of all kinds of people, all different walks, and I listen to every single minute every other week. Um I've already felt I've grown so much, um
In what ways?
in just in how aware I am, even when I'm communicating, or even the words that I'm choosing, or the transitions, which, we briefly spoke about, transitions, but overall, just being a better speaker and a better listener, and being even gaining more compassion, towards hearing other people's stories, and learning about humans overall. So all those learnings, and even future connections. Even the people that I have yet to meet that I will probably meet,
Yeah.
like that excites me, and like I look forward to that, to what the opportunity that having a podcast will be able to connect me with, other people that are like-minded or that I can be continuously inspired by, maybe even help, be of service if
Yeah.
possible, or even, partnering with different organizations that have good goals. So I'm excited more so for the opportunities that it might present. What it will become, who knows? I think that's gonna be kind of like the miracle part and the fun part.
Right, right. I think the key and the thing for now is just the consistency of posting like every 2 weeks, right? And
Hmm.
keeping talking to people and keep meeting people, new people,
And that's fun,
people we know,
right?
to get to know them better, right? And I mean, even like you, Reggie, who I think he was the last episode we released. You met him through the podcast, so
Right. Through
um,
a guest on the
yeah,
podcast.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So hopefully more of that to come.
definitely. Yeah. So that is something that that really excites me when I think about the future in regards to the podcast.
Yeah, and I think even now that you sat here and said it, I hadn't even realized it because in the day to day. But it's like, yeah, you have gotten much better at interviewing and speaking to people, and you don't do that thing I said, like the yeah, 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 like you don't do that
I'll
anymore.
overdo it.
Yeah, you
I
don't
might
overdo it.
still do it, but
Yeah,
not overdo it.
yeah, it probably sounds like natural now.
So,
Are there any other like like how do I say this? Like learnings from the podcast that you've had that have like carried over in your day-to-day life?
well, I would say the biggest thing is just like the communication part, and the awareness to be a better listener. So, I would, thinking about day to day, let's say business, right? Even comparing to when I first started real estate about 6 years ago, um, I I would do I even when I remember now sitting in these meetings and talking to my clients or, future clients, I would do all the talking. I thought I needed to do all the talking to help them understand the process and what to do and yada yada, right? So I would do a lot of talking. So now, you know, I mean, not just from the podcast. I mean, I've learned this through other trainings and other just things that I've came across that I've learned. But the podcast again is kind of bringing that awareness, of being more of a listener. And what I mean by listener, I guess that would be a good question, right? Is not just to hear it, but to hear it and try to understand it, and whatever I don't understand to try to understand. Um so that's what I mean by a better listener, is to
Okay.
actually understand what it is that they're saying.
That's really interesting actually. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, kind of similar, not like communication, but I have learned some stuff too. I think the main thing is the one of the things you mentioned, which is like being more compassionate. So like I would like prejudge some of our guests, and like I said, I'd be like, they're like, all right, recording another podcast, like, and I would think I was gonna be bored or something, but every single person that's been on, I've learned something from, um, and it's not like these like hard like I learned like math, but it's like these like life stories and lessons which kind of apply to my own life, right? So
Mhm.
just sitting there and listening to someone's story for um, hours, really, it there's always like something that comes from it that I learn. I go, oh, and like it applies like to my own life.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
But I think, I mean, we from my perspective, I think we've covered like most stuff about the podcast that I had wanted to touch on. Is there any other like things regarding the podcast that you want to talk about or touch on?
Mm, regarding the podcast itself, I think you've done a great job covering.
Like we've said, podcast 1,000 times.
Well, we are the topic is podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I don't think so. I think you did a great job just kind of walking through the whole podcast world that we're in.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, it was my first time hosting, so
Yeah.
I was probably nervous like you were the first episode.
Well, you did much better than me.
Well, I have had the opportunity to sit through 20 of these, right, and listen, and so kind of trial by fire. Like I've kind of been in it a little bit
Mm,
already, and this like I stepped fully into the fire today.
yeah. Very
Um,
courageous. And it was your idea, which I like really respect.
and this that we're 6 months into the podcast, about halfway through the year 2023. So I think what we'll do, we have this episode, which is kind of the origin story of the podcast. I think we'll probably do another episode where I interview you again, and we can just go through your life from birth up until the podcast, right? And then maybe we'll flip the scales one day, and you can interview me once I get the courage to get over the fear to get behind the to get in that seat,
Yeah.
right?
I know. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.